On August 7th, Beijing Youth Daily published an article on behalf of the Party Central Committee and the State Council. Vice Premier Zhang Guoqing inspected 3 provinces in 6 days. It is said that in the past few days, Vice Premier Zhang Guoqing has visited Beijing, Tianjin, and Heilongjiang. The article mentioned in particular that Zhang Guoqing was appointed by General Secretary Xi Jinping as representative of the Party Central Committee and the State Council. So, Xi Jinping has finally responded to the accusation that he did not go to the flooded area and had no sympathy for the victims. It is worth noting that at first, when the official media reported on Zhang Guoqing's inspection in one of Beijing's districts, the report only mentioned that he was appointed by the CPC Central Committee and the State Council, without referring to Xi Jinping. And the news was not widely cited, not even mentioned in the CCTV news broadcast. At that time, Zhang Guoqing was just doing his routine administration work. However, from August 2nd, the small city of Zhuozhou, located in Hebei province, began to be widely noticed by the outside world because the situation there was extremely serious. The floodwater was as high as 5 or 6 meters, and the miserable situation of the victims aroused great sympathy. The helplessness of the victims and the indifference of the governments made people feel strongly indignant. Especially, none of the leaders went to inspect the situation, and none of the leaders made any sign or indication. In the 2 days thereafter, news of the Zhuozhou flood was the focus of the media, and public opinion was turbulent. Although within China, the public voice did not dare to openly criticize or accuse Xi Jinping, all kinds of dissatisfaction and complaints must have left the highest authority in panic. Most likely, they did not expect that the disaster in Zhuozhou would have led to a significant social impact. From August 5th, official media began to highlight Xi Jinping's concern about the disaster. CCTV cited an article published by Xinhua News Agency in the evening news broadcast. The Party Central Committee, under the leadership of Comrade Xi Jinping, is strong and powerful in directing Beijing's flood control and relief work. The same article was also published in the People's Daily the next day. In other words, the 3 major CPC media began to defend Xi Jinping and praise him. On August 6th, the first item of CCTV's evening news broadcast was a Xinhua News Agency article. The Party Central Committee, under the leadership of Comrade Xi Jinping, is strong and powerful in directing Hebei's flood control and relief work, trying to fill in the gap created by Xi Jinping's indifference. It said that Xi Jinping was extremely concerned about the disaster in Hebei province and gave important instructions, and that a series of emergency responses were immediately made to implement the decisions and deployments of the CPC Central Committee and the State Council. However, news from Zhuozhou told a different story. Many affected people were still left unattended, even without food. That night, the second item on the CCTV news broadcast was that Zhang Guoqing, appointed by General Secretary Xi Jinping, was in Tianjin to guide flood control and relief works. This time, obviously, the special emphasis on appointed by Xi Jinping was intended to tell the public that, although Xi Jinping himself did not go there, he sent his imperial envoy, as if His Majesty were present in person. This time, Zhang Guoqing's work had become a political mission. On August 7th, the second item on CCTV's news broadcast was that Zhang Guoqing, appointed by General Secretary Xi Jinping, gave instruction on flood rescue and relief in Heilongjiang. Again, it was emphasized that he was appointed by Xi Jinping. Moreover, CCTV also aired footage of Zhang Guoqing in Heilongjiang. In addition, the People's Daily published an article entitled, "Heartbreaking, a deputy town director died in flood control and rescue." It detailed the story of the deputy town director who died in one of Beijing's districts. And Xinhua News Agency issued a message that a deputy mayor and 3 other public officials in Jilin died in the flood. While the people were still suffering from the great disaster, the authority tried to cover up their dereliction of duty and malfeasance with the heroic deeds of some individual officials as a way of making the people speechless. Nevertheless, no matter how the official media tried to fool the world, public attention was still focused on the disaster in Zhuozhou. The public was concerned about whether the local people were all out of danger, how many were killed, and how much damage they had suffered.
However, there is no more updated news in the media. Obviously, the authority must have taken strict measures to block information.
In fact, North China, especially the area around Beijing, rarely see floods of this magnitude. In case of the sudden disaster, it may be expected that the loss of people's lives and property must have been very heavy. The government certainly did not want the outside world to know the truth, because this was exactly the result of their dereliction of duty. They failed to make proper planning and deployment in advance, so that a large number of people were trapped in the floods and even were killed. When human beings could not escape in time, domestic animals and livestock were even worse off. Almost all the domestic animals raised by some farmers were drowned, and the losses of some people amounted to tens of millions of yuan. For those who managed to escape to safe places, their homes were submerged in the floodwaters. Many people's houses collapsed, and they were left with nothing. The flooding in Zhuozhou, so to speak, was more serious than anyone expected, and had instantly brought this small city at the southwestern end of Beijing to the attention of the whole country, and even to the world. Every year, Xi Jinping would inspect many places outside Beijing. Zhuozhou is just 70 kilometers away from Beijing. Shouldn't he go there in person? He just doesn't dare to go, and doesn't want to go. Yet he still pretends to be a saintly ruler who saves the people from disasters and relieves them from miseries. Xinhua News's report on Xi Jinping's strong command of the flood relief work reminds of his behavior at the beginning of the COVID-19 outbreak. After the outbreak of the epidemic in Wuhan, Xi Jinping did not dare to go there to inspect. He even did not dare to serve as the head of the leading group for the prevention and control of the epidemic. He hid in Beijing but told the Director General of HU that he had been personally directing and personally deploying the work of preventing and controlling COVID-19. He is extremely afraid of death on the one hand, but on the other hand, he is extremely greedy for reputation. Plainly a wicked and shameless coward, yet still pretending to be a sensitive and righteous hero, Xi Jinping's behavior has been widely despised, making him an object of ridicule. If Xi Jinping's past actions had already made him infamous, his performance in the COVID-19 epidemic, especially his bragging and extraordinary shamelessness, made him completely discredited. This time, when the CPC media praised Xi Jinping as the strong and powerful commander in the flood control and relief in Hebei province, it sounds absolutely disgusting. There have already been plenty of evidences showing that the local people in Zhuozhou were not notified in advance and evacuated in time, that they did not receive timely help afterwards, and that they are now left in a state of panic, and many are even left in despair. In spite of the brutal reality, the CPC media continued to claim that Xi Jinping was the strong and powerful commander in Hebei flood control and flood relief. On August 7th, Zhang Guoqing, as Xi Jinping's imperial envoy, finally arrived in Zhuozhou, when the water had basically receded and left the ancient city devastated. Zhang Guoqing said that Xi Jinping was very concerned about the disaster situation everywhere, always thinking about the safety of the affected people, very concerned about the goings-on of the disaster situation and the progress of the disaster relief, and repeatedly urged to continue to do a good job in the rescue and relief, repair and restoration, especially the safety of the affected people and the protection of their lives. Obviously, the main task of Zhang Guoqing in Zhuozhou was to say these words on behalf of Xi Jinping in front of the media. He tried to make people believe that Xi Jinping was a very benevolent and saintly emperor. In fact, the disaster in Zhuozhou was absolutely a man-made calamity created by Xi Jinping's administration. It is the direct evil effect of Xi Jinping's decision to construct the Xiong'an New District in Baiyangdian Lake area. The first and most thing Xi Jinping must do now is to issue an edict to convict himself as the culprit, rather than sending his subordinates to proclaim his benevolence, to cover up his scandal. At this point, I am reminded of a funny story. A mother, together with her kid, was buying food from a peddler who came to their door. While doing this, the mother accidentally farted. It was so embarrassing that she turned to her kid and said, "Look at you. You should not fart in front of people." More embarrassing than she expected, the kid immediately refuted. "I didn't fart," he said. After they returned into their room, the mother explained to the child, "If an adult fart, people would laugh at her. You are a child. No one would laugh at you." The child suddenly realized his mother's embarrassment. So he rushed outside and shouted to the peddler who was walking away, "Peddler, I farted that fart, not my mom." It is no longer a secret that Xi Jinping is a shameless and hideous figure. It is particularly hateful that he enjoyed himself in the summer resort of Beidaya, totally disregard the people's miserable situation in Zhuozhou. After Xi Jinping has been so much loathed and despised by the people, it is unthinkable that the CPC media and Xi Jinping's subordinates continue to cover up for him. This is more than shameless. It is stupid and absurd. Over the years that Xi Jinping has been in power, he has been indulged in personal worship. He is even deifying his personal image. He probably believes that with full-scale propaganda, he would be able to surpass the great image of Mao Zedong, and he would become the great leader admired by all the people. In fact, the reason why Mao Zedong could be deified is that the vast majority of the people simply did not know the truth of his so-called great achievements in history, and the people had no choice but to believe whatever the CPC propagated. But Xi Jinping's words, deeds, and acts over the years have been exposed to the people's eyes and been kept in their memories. Over the past decade or so since he came to power, Xi Jinping has done so much evils that are disastrous to the country and the people. Many people have come to know and see through him well enough. It is difficult to wipe out the conviction that Xi Jinping is wicked, incompetent, shameless, and ignorant. Since the CPC came to power, there has never been a leader like Xi Jinping, who has been universally scorned and ridiculed. This time, through Zhuozhou flood, the people see how rash and absurd is Xi Jinping's Millennium Project of the Xiong'an New District, and how the dictator's ignorance and stupidity have brought great disaster to the people of China. This Zhuozhou flood also gives the people one more opportunity to witness Xi Jinping's extreme selfish and coward character. Xi Jinping's public image has become more intolerable. To this point, all the CPC media's effort to whitewash Xi Jinping will only invite more ridicules. Xi Jinping has committed the crimes of a tyrant, whereas his whitewashers are still trying to disguise him as a saint. Shameless to the extreme, absurd to the extreme.